This is Mrs. Zalecki from Palm Beach Virtual, and it's my turn to read a chapter in Of Beetles and Angels. I'm reading here from my home. You can kind of get a look at what my office looks like. I'm going to be reading the last two chapters basically in the story. And when I started to open up and see which one it was, I noticed that there was a photograph here of Maui and his family when he was in high school. And it made me think, I wonder what I look like in high school, so it made me laugh. And thought, well, I might as well share that with you. This is my family. I'm the youngest of 5. I'm top row, wearing a red sweater with a black scarf. My sister, Linda, looks a lot like me. She's in the middle wearing red. I'm the youngest of 5, the only one not married, the only one without children. So that was a while back. I have 2 kids now. So the chapter I'm going to read, Father Haileab. And there are quite a few names in here that I really don't know how to pronounce super well, but I am going to try my best. So here we go. During the last 2 years of my father's life, I only saw him for about 4 weeks. We spent 2 weeks together in December of 1997, during Christmas break of my junior year at Harvard. After that, I never saw him again. During those last 2 weeks, we sat together on a beaten up dirt brown couches that we had bought back in 1992. These couches were the first ones we had ever bought. All others had come from our free mall or our friends. But this had been a special occasion. My mother, after 12 years of homesickness, had come back from a D to see her family, and had come back to a D to see her family, her mother and family. My father declared that we had to do something for her, and had gone to the Indian brother that Al Habisha went to back then, and bargained for the couches on the eve of her return. We sat on those sagging couches for almost 6 years later, and my father started telling Hintsu and me stories that he had never heard before, or that we had never heard before. One time when we had just come to the country, and our Habisha's brother and sisters had just started to trickle in, Tamiskin and Kimbron called me to help them. Tamiskin and Kimbron were 2 skin and bone brothers, not even 20 when they first came to the States. They had lived with us for several weeks until their sponsors had found them a home. They had gotten themselves into trouble and did not know any English. Knowing no one else who could translate for them, they called me. I had warned Timinskin before that in America it is not like a D. I had warned him that times in a country where you can be just 1 penny short of the grocery store and they still won't forgive you. But Timinskin, he had never considered the talk of people. They were driving one day near the railroad tracks when Timinskin became distracted by something on the side of the road. The next thing he knew, his car had jolted over the curb and broken through several signs, halting only after it had demolished a young plant. Hoping to escape before any authorities had arrived, Timinskin and Kimbron frantically tried to get the car started, but a policeman chanced upon them almost immediately. He accused them of driving without rule, breaking the city signs, and killing the young plant. They came and begged me, "Please, Father Haileab, help us. They have threatened to take away Timinskin's license and to make us pay for the damaged properties, and they will stain our records and make us lost." I did not know what to do or how I could help them, but I agreed to go to court with them so that I could at least translate on their behalf. Hinto and I looked at each other with excitement, trying to imagine our father being before a judge. This was going to be better than Sanford and Son episode, where Fred G. Sanford went to defend his son, Lamont, and got charged with contempt of court. We went to court, and the judge asked me if I knew enough English to translate and if I understood both languages. I told him yes, and I took the promise that they make you take in the court. The judge asked me to ask them if they were guilty of destroying the plants and the signs. I was going to say yes, but I have psychological knowledge that is not contained in books, so I stopped myself. I knew that if we said yes, the judge would fine them and give them many other punishments, but we could not say no. either because the policeman was right there and he had seen them trying to start the car. Listen to me, I counseled them. If you say no, he will know that you are lying, and he might give you an even greater punishment for your dishonesty. But if you say yes, he will still convict you, and you will still face great punishment beyond your means. So let's tell him that a child came across your path when you were driving, and you had to choose between harming the child and destroying the plants and the signs. Because you hold nothing higher than the life of a child, you perversely hopped over the curb and destroyed the property. That's exactly what happened. They both nodded. Tell them. So I told the judge, and he did not understand me at first, and neither did the policeman, but I explained it to him in a good way, and he understood. Hinso and I knew our father well enough to understand what he meant by a good way. We could picture him hunched over the courtroom with his head raised high and his body leaning on his cane, taking a deep breath and starting softly, and then raising his voice to near shouting hands, pummeling emphatically to accentuate his points. Excuse me, father, we are poor. You see me, I am disability. I am poor man and refugee. The poor judge and the poor policeman, the poor courtroom. Why didn't they tell the policeman about the child? The judge asked. Very good, I told him. That's a good question. I had been expecting his question, and I had an answer ready for him. The child's mother had grabbed her child and had run off because she was so terrified. Mother and child had vanished before the policeman could see them. As to Timinskin and Kibrun explaining themselves to the policeman, I told the judge that they had just come to the country and could not communicate. I do not like to lie. You know that the Bible itself tells us that we should not lie. But they came to me and asked for help, and I knew only one way to help them. May God forgive me. My father paused before continuing with his next tale. Another time, the son of Tesfu called me in panic. His family had just come to the country and had moved into their home. Then their youngest son, the big lumbering one, went to take a bath. Well, Haileab had never taken a bath in the American way and did not know how to open the water. He put his big hands on the two water openers. Instead of turning the openers, he pulled. I don't need to tell you how strong he is. He wrenched both openers out of the wall. The water started trickling out at first and then rushed at him in fearsome bursts. Soon it had flooded the bathroom and flowed down the rest of the house. The poor family scurried like roosters and with its heads cut off, and to the kitchen, to the basement, to the little pipes outside, looking for a way to turn the water off. But they had no idea what they were doing. The water kept climbing higher and higher and damaging more and more in the townhouse, seeping into the walls and even into the appliances. Finally, the son of Tesu knocked frantically on his neighbor's door. He could not talk with her because he did not know English, but she understood that he needed help, and she ran back with him and turned off the central water source. But it was too late. The water had flooded the entire house, and worst of all, it had seeped into the walls. Permanent damage had been done. When the landlord saw that his house was ruined, he became crazed and took them to the house of judgment, claiming some thousands of dollars. But several thousand dollars might as well have been $1 billion. They couldn't pay it. I had already translated for them during their first days, as I had done and still do for many of them of the Habisha. They had heard about how I had helped Timinskin and Kimbron years ago, so they came to me and they begged me for help. Again, I did not know how I could help, but I could not refuse them. I told the judge, a different judge from the last time, that I could translate. Again, I took the promise. After explaining the accusations to me, the judge asked me to ask them if they were guilty. Like with Timinskin, I knew that he could not completely deny our guilt. The proof was too strong, but neither could we admit our guilt, because then they would punish us beyond our means. We are poor people, I told the judge. We do not know your language or your ways, especially when we first come here. They came to this country from the back countries of Eritrea and Sudan, and there we do not have plumbing systems. Here you can easily open the water and take a drink or a bath. There, just to drink water, you might have to drag the water from a well, empty it into a kettle, and boil it to kill the parasites. When this family came here, they did not know how to open the water. In fact, you are looking at a family that knew so little about life in America that they marked the same birth date for themselves. Look at their Medicaid card here. It says all 6 of them were born on January 1. The son went to the bathroom, hoping to take a bath, and instead he flooded the house. We do not deny his mistake, and it seems that he should be punished. But let's think about this. Who really made the mistake? The landlord knew that his tenants were refugees from an undeveloped country. He knew that they had just arrived. Did he give them a tour of the house and explain the necessary things to them? Did he explain how to turn the fire on? Did he explain how to open and close the heat? Did he explain how to open and close the water? Whose fault is it then, Father? Does the blame lie with the poor refugees? Is it fair to punish them for being unfamiliar with their new environment? Is it right to punish them for having had to flee their homeland against their will? Or is it fair to blame the landlord, who did not even take 1 second to show them how to take care of his house? I think that the path of the rightness is that the landlord should be on the trial right now for not honoring the rule of the landlord. He should have to pay them money for all of their time that they spent cleaning his floor and for all of the anguish that this experience had caused them. My father leaned back on the couch and he smiled. I'm telling you, the poor landlord was almost crying at the time. By the time I had finished my good explanation, he knew that the judge would spare us, and the judge did. My father was a poor man, but he had not feared to speak in front of judges, nor had he feared to speak in front of other groups, even his church. Help, my poor people are dying. They need prayers, they need food, they need books, so that they can learn. Help, my grandson, in Tigray, has no parents. His mother, my daughter, has died. His father was a Tigray soldier who had raped his mother. Please help him. Most Americans would have dismissed a poor, handicapped refugee like my father. But the beautiful folks at the Wheaton Bible Church remained true to their calling. They saw past his disguise, and they helped him the best that they could, even sending monthly checks to his orphan grandson. I wondered sometimes if God sent my father to test the truest sentiments of their hearts. I wonder if God sends angels to all of us. My father was never afraid to ask for help, but he also used his own power to help others, especially the most recently arrived refugees. The poorer the refugees, the more desperately that they needed help, the more he wanted to do for them. The most desperate families usually came with 5 or 6 children and with parents too old to understand the life in the States. Landlords in Wheaton rarely rented to them. There was one exception, a landlord who rented out his basement. The families would pile in like sardines, up to 10 people huddled into 3 dark rooms. Somalians, Eritreans, Ethiopians, Kenyans, Cambodians, they all moved in, one family after another. Since my father knew Arabic, Tigrian, Amharic, Glitz, English, and even a little Italian, he could usually communicate with the families, even with the non-Habesha. Sometimes he would take a detour before he visited them, walking to the grocery store to buy bread and fruit. He would carry the bread and the fruit to the cellar dwellers and talk to the parents and the kids. He would encourage the kids to educate themselves and the parents to discipline the kids. If you love your children and want them to become good people, you must discipline them now before it is too late. On many occasions, he translated for the parents in the public aid or at school. Other times, he introduced them to extra sources of funding. He helped so much the World Relief Refugee Services eventually gave him a special certificate in recognition of his tireless dedication. We watched in wonder as he showed us showed us this badge of honor, as he framed it and he kept it near him. We asked ourselves how this simple piece of paper inspired such joy and happiness in him. How could it make him radiate so? Maybe the answer lay in his past and in the greatness he had known as an advanced dresser who could help others in their time of need. Life as a beetle has often cloaked it, but the same source of greatness still pulsated here in the States. That greatness continues to pulsate. If not in my father, then in those he has helped, in the stories they still tell him. My father is not here to hear their stories. One night, while my father rode his bike near our home, a drunk driver stole his life. If he could hear the stories, I believe that Haileab, the son of Zedengel, a man did not often cry, would weep uncontrollably. When I found out that my mother had died in a D, Father Haileab came over and stayed with me for 3 days, never leaving my side, asking me what he could get from me, how he could support me. When I found out that my 13-year-old daughter was pregnant and the father unknown, Father Haileab came and wept with me and counseled me, praying for my daughter and for hours, encouraging both of us to keep our hopes burning. When my son graduated from college, Father Haileab came to my home, bearing gifts, and hugged me, and he laughed with me and danced with me for hours at end. When I first came to this country, and I knew no one, Father Haileab let me stay in his home so that I would not have to live in the motel. And he even went with me to the public aid center and stood in line with me for hours and helped translate and advocate for me. When the policeman threw me into the house of imprisonment, Father Haileab collected $20 from each Habesha family and begged a ride to the station for free. When the car broke my leg in two and I had to sleep in the hospital for 2 days, Father Haileab sat up with me and then even came home with me. When my son had no place to stay and I had nowhere to go, Father Haileab risked the wrath of public aid and hid my son in his home for several months. I do not remember much of what was said during the funeral, and I'm not good at remembering such things. The little I remember was said in the language he loved and found from his native Nigeria. The translation: Haileab, the kinder-hearted, the compassionate friend to the poor and the downtrodden, the first to comfort the sick, the last to leave them, allied to his people, our Father and Shepherd. He has gone up, and we pray, O Eternal One, that you receive him.